Hi, and welcome to the Dealing with Technical Debt course. In this course, I want to give you the tools to understand technical debt, what we mean by technical debt, understand the different types of technical debt that could exist, and I want to give you the tools that are going to enable you to break down the technical debt, analyse the technical debt that you've got in your system, and work out a way of prioritising it so you know which technical debt is impacting you the most, and also a way to sell this to management or other stakeholders to get the buy-in that you need in order to solve this technical debt. Before we continue, a little bit about myself. My name is Matt Todd. I'm the founder of Fluent.software. I'm a freelance developer, consultant, and I go into different development organisations and help their development teams become better software teams, become better development teams. And I also teach courses online, obviously, like this one, and I'm on a mission to help 250,000 developers become better software development professionals. So without further ado, let's get straight into lesson 1. And in this first lesson, I want to talk about exactly what we mean by technical debt. So what is technical debt? So technical debt, or tech debt for short, is the term we use to describe code that's not written the way it should be. According to our current standards, we consider the code to be of poor quality and probably harming our ability to develop the way that we'd like to be developing. So maybe the code takes some shortcuts, we consider it to be a bit hacky, it's not really structured the way it should be, not really working the way it should be, might see it's a little bit buggy, a little bit risky to change as well. We refer to it as debt, technical debt, and the metaphor of debt is useful because, like financial debt, if left unpaid, the interest builds up. So what we mean by this is the longer you keep writing bad code or poor quality code, code with this technical debt in it, the longer you keep taking these kind of shortcuts, the harder your system's going to be to work with. And at some point, you have to pay that debt back in order to keep working on the system, to keep adding features, fixing issues, etc. And not all technical debt is created equal. There are different types of technical debt, and I'll break that down shortly. Before we do, I want to list some of the common causes of technical debt, some of the reasons it can creep into our system. First one, most obvious one I'm sure we're all too familiar with, is business pressures. Most commonly time pressures, so product management, other management will say, we need this feature now, we can't possibly wait, we need it by Friday, we need it by this particular date. And this time pressure is what's causing us to take some shortcuts in order to get it out the door. So, second one I commonly see is lack of quality control. Now this could be anything ranging from developer testing, maybe your unit tests aren't up to scratch, maybe you don't have the unit tests that you should have. Could be lack of coverage, or it could just be poorly structured unit tests, or maybe you're missing the full range of automated integration tests, maybe it's manual testing that you're lacking, but basically a deficiency somewhere in that quality control process. The third reason I commonly see is lack of technical knowledge. Now, building and designing systems that are well structured, that are easy to change and adapt over time is not an easy thing to do. It does require a certain level of technical skill in the solution domain, obviously requires problem domain knowledge as well, but you need the technical experience in order to avoid over-engineering systems, but at the same time create systems that are easy to adapt, are amenable to change over time. Another reason could be poor processes or perhaps lack of process awareness. So even in the agile world that we may or may not live in, we all need to know how we're working together. If some developers aren't aware of how code should be developed, reviewed and delivered, then poor code can slip through. So another cause of technical debt, related to the one above perhaps, is that of inconsistency. So even with the best intentions, things like half-complete refactoring efforts can themselves be problematic. It could lead to confusion and more debt to address in different ways. And what I mean by this is different developers will have different opinions on how things should be working now. But unless they carry that through and address all of the existing code in the system, then rather than everything working the way it should be, you end up with two different ways of working, the older legacy way, and then a new way that only part of the system adheres to. And this inconsistency can create confusion over time and lead to more technical debt. The final common cause I want to list is that of technical leadership or lack of strong technical leadership. and managing technical quality has to be an active process. So all of the causes that we just talked about can be things that a strong technical leader should have an eye on. And the more developers you have working on a project, the more active this technical leader should be to ensure that you do have quality across the code base as a whole. And this is something that's more difficult. Obviously, the larger your code base is, maybe it's split into several services, back-end, front-end components, etc. And keeping an overview of all of these things does require strong technical leadership. And without that leadership, technical debt can creep in. Inconsistencies between code bases or between developers can creep in as well. And this leads to this technical debt that you're then going to have to address over time. So to recap, these 6 common causes are business pressures, pressures from management rushing us, saying we need the feature now, we absolutely have to have it, we can't wait. Second one, lack of quality control, so deficiencies somewhere in the manual or automated test that you've got. Third one is technical knowledge, so lacking the technical seniority to be able to design systems that are adaptable over time and don't have a large amount of technical debt. Fourth one is poor process or lack of process awareness. Fifth one is inconsistencies, so inconsistencies in approaches between developers or in different parts of the code base. And finally, technical leadership, so lack of someone with the right technical experience but also authority that has the ability to have an overview of all the systems that you've got going on. Now, before we move on, one thing I'd also like to mention is time. Might not be an obvious one, but time can actually be a cause of technical debt. And what I mean here is that technology advances so quickly, often what might have been a sound technical choice at one time is no longer a good choice. Now, I'm not saying you should always abandon every component chasing the next cool library, that would clearly be a disaster. But sometimes libraries or platforms that you build on, they do stop being maintained over time. So maybe the features that you now need in them aren't present and aren't ever going to be present. Perhaps bugs in these components that we're relying on aren't being fixed anymore. Or perhaps upgrading your toolset could have significant benefits. There could be in time and cost savings that would make it worthwhile upgrading to something that wasn't available before. So just because you don't have technical debt in your system now in one particular area, the passing of time could mean that actually you do have to start addressing that part of the system now. And therefore you could consider that part of the system to have a certain amount of technical debt. i.e. building on that part of the system is no longer as easy as it once was because you've got new features that you have to implement that these older outdated components don't allow you to do so easily. Moving to a more modern component might let you do that. Okay, so I'll leave it here for this lesson. Now we should have a clear idea as to what we mean by technical debt and some of the common causes that can lead to it creeping in the first place. And in the next lesson, I'll look at the different types of technical debt and why we might even set out to deliberately create technical debt.